Blake thought she was under attack when the sandstorm hit. She ducked back, an arm before her face as she glared at the tricky opponent she'd been assigned. True to Jaune's predictions, her semblance had proven useful against the girl's limited ammo. The fight was anything but decided, however, and the two of them both had small pools missing from their aura. As the sand and dust continued to roll in, Blake's eyes stung and she watched her opponent be taken from her sight. That worked both ways, of course. "Do?" the girl howled. "What are you doing? Cut it out!" There was a muffled curse, followed by a cough and the sound of sand moving underfoot. "Damn it! I can't see a damn thing!" "Me neither," Blake thought. "I can hear you just fine, however." Her feline ears twitched beneath her bow. She said do, Jaune's opponent. Is this what he meant about bad teamwork? By using such an attack on Jaune, she robbed Gwen of the range advantage. Blake's smile turned vicious. Nebula too? I'm sure Yang is having a field day with this. Blake slunk low and towards the coughing girl. She was used to fighting with limited vision, something Adam trained her in, but also something her fighting style adapted anyway. With all her spins and pariettes, there were times where she couldn't see her enemy and had to use her other senses. "Where are you?" Gwen coughed. "I'm here," Blake said, from only a few meters behind the girl. A dagger flashed towards her face, but passed through the clone she left behind. Two more flew, but they were slightly off target. The sandstorm is distorting my image, she realized. She isn't able to properly land her attacks because she can't see me. It would hardly help since the girl's eyes must hurt as much as Blake's did. Her vision was hazy too, made worse by her now warded eyes. For Grumble Shout, however, she only needed an outline of her opponent. Gwen Darcy had to carefully aim each throw. Blake smirked and began to gently lope around the girl, like a grim circling its prey. Next time, I'll ask Jaune to fill me in on the whole plan, as opposed to springing it on us as well. She smiled to herself. He certainly did enjoy surprising them. Nebula swore under her breath and tried to be as quiet as she could. What was Do thinking about doing this? Didn't she understand what her wind would do with all this sand? No, it didn't matter. All that mattered was finding the rest of her team and convincing Do to put an end to this. Her opponent was too much. A monster in close combat that just would not stay down. Range had been her only recourse. And wasn't that a laughable thought now? I need to find the others. Reconvene and team up. I'm useless here. Nebula swallowed her fear. She eased her foot to the side, eyes scanning left and right. She couldn't see much for the sand-filled wind, but with Zhao Long's speed, she needed to see that faint blur in time to dodge. Failure to dodge wasn't an option. She seen what a single punch did to that ship's mass. The sound was terrifyingly loud, and almost akin to what she imagined her spine snapping would sound like. Something shifted to the left. Nebula's heart leapt into her throat. She turned aghast, finger pulling the trigger before she could stop herself. Her bolt shot off into the sand with a near-silent twang. There was no cry of pain from its direction. Crap, crap, crap. Nebula's hand shook as she reloaded her weapon. I can't afford to jump at shadows. There's an actual enemy in here with me. I need to stay calm. She managed to get it loaded with the string snapped back into place. With a panicked breath, she took a step back. A hand clamped onto her shoulder. Found you, her nightmare whispered. Damn it, Jaune. This has all your handiwork written all over it. Wise sighed and brushed some sand away from her cheek. She tried to block the sandstorm as it hit, but the moment she dropped the wall of ice, it still got everywhere. I hate sand. How about you? Damn you, Octavia groaned. The girl was flat on her back, her weapon several meters away. "Let it be a lesson to you," Weiss said, trailing her weapon behind her as she strode towards the girl. Her aura was already low, while Weiss's own stood about half or more. The battle had never really been fair from the start, and Octavia's strange sand-skidding trick had turned for the worse when Weiss introduced ice to the equation. "A lesson? Of what?" "When a girl tells you not to bring up her love life." Weiss thrust down, piercing the sand not an inch beside the girl's head. "Don't!" Octavia's wide eyes rolled back into her skull. Weiss sheathed her weapon. "Now to find that idiot before he manages to get himself injured. I wouldn't be surprised if he chokes to death on this sand just to spite me." Jaune's sword clashed against Du's spear. Sparks flew and she twisted back, bringing the point around in search of his heart. He caught it on his guard instead, twisting it and forcing her to one side. His shoulders rammed into her chest, followed by his pommel into her stomach. As she staggered back, he gripped Kurokomore's by the blade and brought it around the side of her head, wielding it like a club. She flew back into the storm. He followed. "Damn you!" Du growled. She tried to keep her eyes on him, but the sand stung at them, while Neptune's goggles kept him safe. Her lunge was clumsy and easily battered aside with the back of his hand. He lunged in and cut towards her face in return. Had she no aura like him, it would have taken out her eye and left a nasty scar. As it was, she fell back with a cry of pain and one hand clutched to her face. She would bruise at worst. "It's nothing personal, Du. You were just in the way." He chuckled. "Well, I put you there, but it had to be somewhere I knew you'd try this. Hacking the terminal into granting them Team NGO, and then also to ensure the battlefield. It had been a risky play, but what worked for SSSN could work for them. Even better, in fact, since his team was stronger than Sun's had ever been." He pointed his sword towards her, even if to her it was but a hazy image. "Surrender. We don't need to keep fighting." "What?" She scoffed. "Afraid? I'm a lover more than a fighter. But afraid." He paused. "There are plenty of things that frighten me, Du. Sadly, you're not one of them." He stepped forward. "Then again, it's probably for the best you're not. I like to kill things I'm afraid of. Keeps them from being problems." "Don't you dare think you've won this. My team will—" "Do nothing," he interrupted. "After all, this sandstorm is much a problem to them as it is to you. You can't even cut off the tornadoes since you can't even see them. They'll wear out in time." "True. But how much time? And will you still be in a position to take advantage of it?" Her teeth ground together. With a cry, she lunged forward, spinning the spear above her head. He stepped back to avoid the first sweep, then parried the return of a downward swing. She spun and brought the weapon behind her, but he followed and parried it, sparks flying as the weapons grated against one another. Her foot swept at his, but he saw it and stepped over, slamming it down between her eyes and using his arms to push her weapon back into her. She stumbled over his leg and fell to one knee. As he swung down, she smirked and slammed a fist into the sand. Wind exploded out from her. It caught him in the grass and carried him several meters away. Though he kept hold of his sword, his jacket was buckled up into his face, and he was forced to hold both arms before him to avoid being swept away. The sand had such recourse, and was blasted off into the side of the arena. There, the barriers took control and prevented it from flying into the crowd. Sunlight pierced down on them once more, along with the roar of the crowd. Her attack had cleared the storm entirely. "There," she said. Let's see how you do now that your little trick has been foiled. My trick? You do realize that was your attack, right? He laughed when she blushed and cursed him under her breath. I am known for my tricks, though. Used to get me in all sorts of trouble with Galinda. There was always one she wouldn't allow, though. Cut the idea off before it could even get anywhere. Damn shame. He shook his head, then cocked it towards Du. Would you like to see it? I'm not afraid, she said. A lie. But she had spunk so he wouldn't call her out on it. It's quite simple, really, he said. Just me using every weapon at my disposal. But for some reason, Galinda thought it was unfair or something. Do your worst. As you wish. Jaune waved a hand and smiled. Yang? Kill. Huh? Du looked confused. I suppose I could. Yang laughed, startling the girl. The spearwoman spun on the spot, pointing her weapon at the blonde. Her eyes widened and she turned to the left as well, in time to see Blake stood there. She had the black scarf she wore around her neck covered up over her mouth, likely to shield it from the sand. Hold on, Yang. Weiss grated. Her partner did not look pleased, nor clean. Her normally pristine battle outfit was married with orange and brown, and he could see sand in her white hair. I believe I have a score to settle with this individual as well. After all, someone seemed to think it a good idea to cover me in sand. Weiss's weapon came free in a shower of ice dust. I hate sand. Du looked between them, struggling to keep her spear pointed towards each as they fanned out. As a last resort, she turned to him, eyes wide. Jaune grinned. Nice trick, hey? I call it a team. You might have heard of it. Yeah! To us! Yang cheered, one foot on her bed and the other holding a can of soda. Champions of Vital! To us, Weiss echoed, along with Blake and Jaune. She took a drink from her own, the sweet and sugary taste a welcome treat despite its unhealthy calorie count. Tonight wasn't a night for worrying about such nonsense, however. Tonight, they celebrated. Don't you think it's a little early to call us champions? Blake asked. We only won our first fight. Yeah, but by the end of tomorrow's fight, the combatants are going to be cut by half. We're already in the top 50% by just doing this. Yang's mood was infectious, and it seemed even the normally stoic Blake couldn't fully hide her smile. Weiss didn't even try. She knew it would have been a losing battle. The rush of victory had mixed with the euphoria of their performance, and then been enhanced by the roar of the crowd and Port's praise over the speaker's systems. She told herself not to let it get to her head, but it absolutely had. It had all gone to their heads. And she didn't care in the slightest. She would calm down tomorrow, and then go on to their 2 versus 2 fights a day or two after with a calmer mind. Right now, she was happy, in a way she'd never been before. It was more intoxicating than the wine she'd once sampled with her sister. Success and victory weren't strangers to her, nor to any Schnee. She was used to achieving what she set out to, even if the route wasn't always easy. She'd become a singer to prove she could, and then a huntress to escape her father's influence, and she excelled at that too. Such thoughts would bring a calm, if pleased, smile to her face. This was different. She'd succeeded, but her team had succeeded too, and they'd done it together. More than that, she cared about their success in a way she'd never had for another. She'd always wished the best for her sister, of course, but that had been a distant thought. Winter would excel because, well, she was Winter, with Team Jazzberry, her team. There wasn't quite that same assurance. Once upon a time, They'd been a mess of a team hardly fit to be part of Beacon. Now, they stood on the precipice of becoming champions, and Weiss loved that she was able to experience it with other people who shared her enthusiasm. It made her feel free, bubbly, overflowing, like she was a glass spilling water over the edge. She felt drunk without touching a drop of alcohol, and without the sense of regret she always saw in her mother's eyes. She even waived Jaune's punishment for making them panic. At least that was what she told herself, and not that she really hadn't meant it in the first place. "How did you know so much about their team, Jaune?" she asked. The question brought Yang to silence and caused one of Blake's feline ears to perk towards them. She no longer wore her bow in the confines of their room. "That's what I spent this morning doing," he said, despite a certain daughter's suspicions otherwise. He shot a small smile at Blake, but she only huffed and pretended to be reading one of her books. "How?" "I have my ways," he said. Weiss's heart dropped as she thought of what he might mean, and the good cheer that had felt so invulnerable began to fade away. "Not that," Jaune said, having caught her. "I didn't do anything like that, Weiss. I just found some of their records and went through them. I didn't think anything else. It was a lie, and they both know it." "Gods, don't be so silly, Weiss. You know he sleeps around, and it's not like the two of you are together. He can do whatever he wants." There was no denying the relief she felt at hearing he hadn't gone that far. Her fingers played with the cool can in her hand. Everyone was looking at her. Everyone knew her thoughts. "Do you have any information on any other teams?" she asked, more to distract them than because she cared. "Or could you find more?" Jaune nodded. "We were lucky we ended up against Team NDGO. Really. I knew their weakness from reading, and the battlefield they got played into right into our hands. Those tornadoes would have caused a smokescreen like that in any other area." His smirk took an almost smug edge, and Weiss had the oddest suspicion their luck wasn't quite as lucky as he suggested. No. She was surely reading into things. Surely. "We'll have to see what comes with the others. I'll find out what I can." "Wow. Dad sure is pulling out all the stops." Yang leaned back. "Are you even my father anymore? I'm not used to seeing this kind of motivation from you." "Or any kind," Blake added. "Yeah. What gives?" Weiss would admit to her own curiosity too. She stayed quiet, watching him as he looked between the two girls. "Are you trying to say I'm lazy?" "Yes," they said in unison. "Normally, anyway," Yang added. "You've picked up recently. I'd be happy if it wasn't so unusual. Please tell me the world isn't ending." It could be," he said. "Maybe that's what I'm trying to stop." "Sounds like quite the story. You want to tell it?" "Well, it all began 1,000 or so years ago." Jaune ducked out of the way of a pillow, laughing happily. "Why ask if you won't listen or believe it?" "I don't even know why I try." Yang sighed, arming herself with another. She launched it, and although Jaune caught it, the white thing blocked his vision and was unprepared for the boot which caught his chest and knocked him off the bed with a yelp. "Score!" Yang cheered. Truly the aim of a champion." A giggle escaped Weiss, quickly replaced with a laugh as she watched her partner rear back up and throw Yang's boot atop the nearby cabinet. Yang made a threatening gesture with her other, while Blake did her best not to get caught in the crossfire. "I love my team," Weiss thought. It was a startling realization, even if it had been on the tip of her tongue for what felt like weeks. Now, though, it felt so much clearer. She loved her team. She really did. Beacon was possibly, nay, definitely, the best thing to have ever happened to her. She didn't think she felt so carefree, so happy ever before. Her scroll beeped, the call of surprise but also delighted her. "Winter!" Weiss greeted, accepting the call. "Did you see?" "Calm, sister." Winter chilled. Weiss's cheeks flushed, but she didn't feel as ashamed as she might once have. Here with her team, she didn't need to be calm. She didn't need to be a snee. "I saw your match, dear sister. You acquitted yourself wonderfully and I was impressed with your performance, as I believe were a lot of other people." It was hard to keep the joy from her voice. "Thank you, sister. Is that why you called? To congratulate me?" "Yes and no. I'll admit, I wanted to do that, but I also need to meet with you. Could you come to my room?" "Now?" Weiss looked to her team. "Can it not wait?" "It cannot. Worry not, Weiss. It won't take an hour." "I'll be there," she said, ending the call. The others were all facing her when she looked up, and she smiled for their benefit. "My sister wants to see me. Don't stop the celebrations on my account. I'll be back soon enough." Jaune made a stand. "Do you want me to come with you?" No. My sister doesn't like me much." Weiss winced, but couldn't deny it. "I'll be back soon, I promise. Winter probably just wants to talk about the fight. That or the family business. Do you want me to fetch you anything back?" "A cake?" Yang suggested. "Something I can find at." Weiss checked her scroll. 8 in the evening. "A cake?" Yang's giggle was cut off by a pillow. "Thank you, Jaune." Weiss nodded and received one in return. Their laughter echoed behind her as she slipped out of the room and down the corridor. The faster she went to meet with her sister, the sooner she could be back with her team. She also promised to watch Ruby's team compete tomorrow. Not that she would have missed that for anything. It was to be a final bout between the two teams after all. That had been their promise to one another. Winter's room was more lavish than their own, but not situated too far away. Weiss knocked on it twice, and only entered once Winter called for her to do so. "You wanted to see me, Winter?" "Oh." Weiss bowed. "General Ironwood, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt." "Ah, Miss Schnee. That might become confusing. May I call you Weiss?" She nodded. "As for interrupting, you needn't worry. It was actually yourself I wanted to speak to."